Hi everyone, this follows on from the last session where we placed an image into Illustrator and you did some live trace outcomes. I just wanted to update you with a more advanced technique of doing that. So as you know, you would go to place your image. You can place it here. I've chosen to do a portrait version this time, just to show you that you can work either portrait or landscape, even if your image is in the opposite format. It's really about filling your artboard with the work that you want to create. So you would click place, and your image would be on your artboard. When you want to start working with that, you need to click on the actual image. And if you remember from last week or last session, there's lots of different options up here. So what you can also do is when you go to window, it will give you lots of different options here. For example, if your layers weren't showing, you could come in here, you could click it. This is also where you can reset your workspace because sometimes you'll find that there are certain things missing. So this is a good thing to come up at the beginning of working on it, especially on a new computer. You would go to workspace and then you can click the essentials, and essentials will come up. The reason for going into this today is to click on the image trace. So let's do that again. I've clicked off of it. So image trace, and you'll see that next to properties will be image trace, and then there's a lot more detail in here. Last week when we were doing it, well, last session, sorry, you'll find we were using the drop down menu. So now you can go to a more advanced version, which is you would import your image. You in the Windows box you would choose image trace, and then you'll have lots of different options where you can change the threshold of what you're working with. I'll give you an example. Let's go with the grayscale again. It's good to click the preview box. And remember, before we rasterized the image, so let me quickly do that. If you remember rightly, it was so it would speed up this process, or sometimes certain computers will struggle. Okay, so as an example there, I've clicked on the preview because that means that when you're actually working on your image, you'll get a live update. So for example, threshold now is on 127. What happens to it if we bring it down? Right, okay, so you'll see that the threshold, the lower the number, reduces the darker tones or black tones that are actually in that image to the point where they disappear. So this means you can start having a bit more control over what you're doing, and to make judgments on what you're doing. Like I'll ask you to do this all the time, but just to review what you're doing and build up your own sense of style by asking yourself, is the image how you want it to look, and if not, how can you change that? I quite like this cutout method to have quite clean, crisp edges. You can see that the difference in tone is what's being picked up here around her jacket, so there's more detail. So that's what it would look like in black and white. You can also, the sharpness of the edges is comes to corners. One way to really see the difference between any kind of technique that you do, go to the farthest end. I go either end of the scale and see what's actually happening. This doesn't seem to be changing too much. And then if you saw what happened there with noise, that's another way of cleaning up the image that you've got. So if I click on there, you can see that some additional little sections there have disappeared. We are going to leave those in because there's a niceness to some of those. Okay, so this is what it looks like in black and white. You can also use this as another method to clean up in colour. Remember from last time it was 3, 6 or 16 on the presets that came with image trace, but now we're going to have a bit more control over the colours that we use. Let's reset these. Okay, so you can see that right now there's 30 colours in there. So we know what it looks like as 3, 6 or 16. So let's try something in between those. 3, 6 and 16. Let's try 10 colours, see what that looks like. Okay, so I quite like that, you know. Again, you can mess around with these to neaten them up. I'm going to follow on with a separate video on how to clean up your these kind of messy areas here. That will be in a separate video. Don't want to make these videos too long, so I'll see you in the next one. Part 2 coming up.